A very good morning to one and all present here. I, Shraddha Patil, a faculty of Lingraj College, along with the entire organizing team of the Faculty Development Program, uh, Srimati M.R. Banhatti ma'am, Dr. C. Rama Rao, Vinayak Varute, Dr. Raghavendra Hajkorkar, and Ms. Rucha Birje, would like to welcome each one of you to this 7 days online national level faculty development program on mental health and physical fitness during post COVID 19, organized by Keli Society's Lingraj College, Belagavi, Department of Psychology, and Department of Physical Education and Sports, in collaboration with Physical Education Foundation of India and PEFI Karnataka chapter, recognized by Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports. The agenda for public health in India includes the epidemiological transition, demographical transition, environmental changes, and social determinants of health. The role of government in influencing population's health is not only limited to the health sector, but also various sectors outside the health sector. In India, public health needs to be strengthened. Capacity building and regulation of public health are important contributors to the health sector. Nutrition, safe drinking water, sanitation, education, social security, social distancing, gender mainstreaming, and population stabilization are more important to protect the community's health from disaster and disease, thus making the public health sector more valuable by accepting the challenge of present scenario of COVID-19. This FTB focuses on mental and physical health, which aims at creating awareness among communities at large in the present scenario and during post COVID 19 period. Let us begin the first session of the 7 day online national level FTB program. I request Dr. R.M. Patil, sir, Principal Lingraj College, Belgaum, to welcome the gathering.
Good morning. It gives me a great pleasure to warm welcome all of you on this occasion. Thanking you for joining us to enter the program of Faculty Development Program. On behalf of the Kaylee Society and on my behalf, I welcome all to the 7 days the Faculty Development Program on the mental health and physical fitness during the COVID 19. It is indeed a great pleasure for me to extend warm welcome to all the resource persons who have recognized well in their respective subjects and address on different topics in order to reduce the your stress. About the college. College is synonymous with the Indian educational spectrum. It was established on the 13th November 1960 by selfless and dedicated service of the Saptarishis with vision and foresight to spread the literacy and knowledge. The doctrine of the Decale Society lay facial emphasis on the fourth principle. One is truth, love, service, and selfless. 103 years, the selfless service by the Kelly Society, which is a multifaceted organization delivering the quality and value-based education in the different stream. The college has, the society has also collaborated with the prestige institutions of the UK, USA, Malaysia, and China. the society has achieved the horizontal and vertical growth under the leadership of Dr. Prabhakar Kore, MP, Chancellor, KLE Society University, Belgaum, who have put the KLE Society on global map. KLE Society includes 16,000 employees, 126 students in making KLE Society an international educational destiny. About the college, Lingaraj College, founded in 1933, is the first college of the KLE Society, with the region Man Making a Nation building. The NAC re-accreditation the college at A level. The college has the three courses of arts, commerce, BBA, and PG. About the seminar, the FDF is focusing on mental health and physical fitness. It aims at providing the awareness among the society. The mental health awareness is a form of education that we can do. So, a regular exercise which reduces our stress and helps with recovery from mental health disease during this period. A very welcome to all once again. I would like to thank the faculty and member of the college for their sincere efforts which has led to this program. Thank you one and all. Now, without further ado, I will turn a time over to the next section. Thank you one and all.
Thank you, sir, for a cordial welcome. We have with us an eminent dignitary as one of the resource persons of this FDP. He's none other than Dr. Piyush Jain. Sir completed his bachelor's and master's in physical education from Lakshmi Bai National Institute of Physical Education, Gwalior, and his doctorate from SRTM University, Nanded, Maharashtra. At present, Sir is the Secretary General of Physical Education Foundation of India, which is an NGO working for the promotion of physical education and sports in India. I request Dr. Piyush Jain, sir, to present the inaugural address.
Good morning, all of you. First of all, I congratulate Lingaraj College, Department of Psychology and Department of Physical Education and Sports for organizing this 7 days online faculty development program. All those who are attending this program, they must learn after this COVID-19 how physical fitness can help to grow the mental health. As we all know that physical activity, those who are doing regular physical activity, they are not only physically fit with their muscles power, but they also develop a good and sound mental health. In some proverbs, we all said that sound mind in a sound body. If you have a good body, you have a good mind. So on behalf of Physical Education Foundation of India, as we all know that it's an organization who is continuously promoting this type of event, which are for the development of physical education, physical activity, fitness, and sports culture in India. So on my personal behalf, I congratulate Lingaraj College, KLE Society, its dynamic principal, Dr. R.M. Patil, and organizing secretary, Srimati M.R. Banhatti ji, and Dr. C. Ramarao for organizing this 7 days online faculty development program, and my best wishes for successful organization of this conference. Thank you, all of you, and give request to all of you to stay safe, stay healthy, and give your best in this faculty development program. Thank you once again.
Thank you, sir, for your well wishes. Moving further, the resource person of the first session is a very dynamic personality, Professor Sundar Raj Ars, Professor, University College of Physical Education, Bangalore, Karnataka. A magnanimous personality with a magnanimous biodata running up to 10 pages. And I have been assigned with the Herculean task of introducing him. Well, Sir needs no introduction. He's a well-known figure in the field of sports. Sir has held various important and key positions in his enriched career. Sir has represented his school and college at various sports meets. Sir has been a life member of various organizations. At present, he is the president of PEFI Karnataka chapter. Sir's research experience is very rich and vivid. He has guided several research scholars, of which 18 students have been conferred with PhD. Sir's research experience is more than that of 34 plus years. Well, his research abstracts have been published in various seminars, workshops, conferences, and symposia. Sir has presented papers in various national and international conferences, and he has authored 2 books that have been selected by the State Library Selection Committee, Government of Karnataka. Sir has been awarded with the Best Teacher Award, Best NSS Coordinator State Award of Karnataka, State White Blood Cell Award. The list is endless, but the time is the constraint. With these few words of introduction, I welcome Professor Sundar Raj Ars and request Sir to take over the session. Sir will be speaking on the topic Views on Psychosocial Concept of Sports Leading to Wellness. Sir, the session is over to you.
Thank you, madam. Thank you. Respected principal of the Lingaraj College, Dr. R.M. Patil, and Madam Psychology Professor, Madam Banahati, and my good friend, a dynamic physical education enthusiast, Dr. Sri Ramarao, Dr. Vinayak and Raghavendra, and all my dear colleagues and participants. It brings me a great pleasure to just share my views and thoughts on how sports can play a role as a psychological point of view, sociological point of view, and cultural point of view. And unfortunately, now in India, sport is not considered as one of the main source of academics. This is unfortunate, but somehow in the recent year, sport is considered as one of the most vibrant and very leading industry of the country. Now, I want to quote Nelson Mandela's statement with regard to the sport. And according to him, sports has the power to change the world, the power to inspire, the power to unite people in a way that little else can. It speaks to people in a long way they understand. This is what Nelson Mandela speaks about the sport. When I take the concept of Kofi Annan, when he chaired the Olympic Committee, and in Lake City in 2012, he says that sport can play a role in improving the lives of not only individual, I might add, but whole communities. I am convinced that the time is right to build on the understanding to encourage governments, development agencies, and communities to think how sports can be included more systematically in the plans to help children, particularly those living in the midst of poverty, disease, and conflict. This is what the Kofi Annan's statement when he was chairing the Olympic Committee in 2002. Why I'm saying all these things? Though the sport is considered worldwide one of the vibrant organization, institution, which can make a lot of changes in the behavior and in the professional attitude of the sportsman, hitherto we have not considered sports as one of the academics. Of course, it only limit to the professional colleges with teachers BPED, MPED, and master degree. Now I wanted to take you to the importance of sports and games as increasingly recognized in India from both the educational and school points, social point of view. Sports in schools, colleges, and university have been given importance. In fact, sports have become an essential part of the curriculum. In most of the institutions, autonomous institutions, and even in the universities, they have taken sports very seriously. As a matter of fact, it is the one which gives main focus and also, and it is the one which gives a recognition to the institutions by imparting knowledge and imparting training and imparting and promoting these sports in a better way. Depending of course upon the availability of funds, facilities, and encouragement for games and sport, especially for the youth, these games not only on the potential sportsman for competitive sport, but also towards the general well-being. We all know that sport fosters the friendship and amenity. See, most of the time we consider sport only for the point of winning medals. And this is not true. Actually, winning medal is the last result of the sport, competitive sports. But the primary motto of the sport is to bring people together. A sport is a constructive phenomena. It is like a family. It is an institution. Sociologically speaking, sport is considered as the seventh institutions of the study, and it brings people up irrespective of caste, color, creed, and make them to understand each other and to fight themselves with cooperation. Regular participation in sports provide a healthy channel for diversion of energies. Wherever students and other youth participate in sport regularly, ensure constructive sublimations. Misdirection of youthful vigor in indiscipline and mischief disruptive activity is curbed. Of course, if imagine if there is no sport activity, there is no sport facilities at the colleges, what happens with the youth? The energy of that youth has to be channelized in a very prospective, positive way. Otherwise, what happens? It will lead to the destructive channels. The surplus energy which is restored in the youth has to be utilized fruitfully. That is one of the major objective of sports. One has to understand that how you can make sports more and more comfortable. The need for discipline, cooperative effort, team spirit, the cult of sportsmanship towards the achievement of a common goal has to be experienced through sporting activity. It is the sporting activity which enhances the cooperation, which enhances the brotherhood, which enhances the understanding of each other. And it is the one which aims at the common goal. And that's what the Nelson Mandela ji has said, that sport speaks in its own language. There is no barrier of languages for sports. Sports itself is a language. And they also learn to cultivate the vital quality of learning how to work together through sports. And this helps them to become not only good winners, but also good losers. And one who accepts his loss, one who accepts his defeat, he can only win in the coming years to come. That is what we always say, the one who loses, he will be the next champion. This helps them to become only a good winners, but also good losers. Both sides playing a game cannot win simultaneously, and ups and downs are common. But of course, these whatever you learn in the sports arena, unfortunately, you had to make sports as an education. Sports education is one of the major concepts of the day, which makes children to understand, take away the benefits of sports on the ground to the family, to the real life. And whatever the cooperation, they fail, they understand, they felt, they knew and they demand at the ground has to be taken away to the family. And the same attitude has to ensure in the families where the sportsman always be above the gentleman. Sports aims at the P. Sport, Sports aims at the P of welfare of the mankind. It has contributed almost all of its capacity to ensure that through application of society will lead towards healthy competition. And you show me the piece of land in the entire world where there is no sport. There may be a place where there is no computer education. There may be a place where there is no some technology, but no place in the universe, a piece of land where there is no sport. So you cannot separate sports from a society. From the time immemorial, sports has become a part of the life of the mankind. Recreation and games foster development of social skills of young people such as teamwork, cooperation, tolerance, support integration of marginalized youth. Sports serve as a common language, bringing people closer together, and show language bringing people closer together. And sorry, repeat agide. It is repeated and show how to work in a team and learn tolerance for each person. And that is one of the most important, how to be tolerant, how you should tolerate to the society, your neighbor, your friend, your roommate, and also in a working place with your colleagues. And you should be very patient to listen to the people. And sports make you to learn that. Sports make you to understand what exactly the patience, what exactly the tolerance. For example, a player, if he is not selected once, selected twice, not selected, he never leave the sports. He will wait for an opportunity, and we wait patiently and without causing any damage, and ultimately he wins by getting to the sports and winning the medal. That's what the sports person learn through the sport. Promote sports as a means of development at the individual and societal level. Promote a culture of peace, social and gender equality. Advocate dialogue and harmony through the collective work, promoting sport and physical education based opportunities for cooperation. Promote recognition of sports and physical education towards economic and social development. That's what I'm telling. Nowadays, sports is not just a recreation. Sport is not just a competitive sport. It is a big industry. It is a big industry. It is attracting people from all over the world, from all corners of the world, and it is focusing on the economic development. Promote sports as a means of development of the individual and societal level, and promote sports and physical education as a mean for health education, as a mean for health education, social and cultural development. So health is the one of the basic need of an individual. Health is a primary need of an individual. How you can get an health? Only through practice and good habits. And sports is the one which always target towards the cultivating the good and best practices and habits in the mankind. So strengthen cooperation and partnership between the stakeholder, including family, school, communities, youth sports association, decision maker, as well as the public and private sectors. Wellness through yoga. I wanted to tell my good friends here, physical education professionals, you must be aware that yoga has become one of the most vibrant, academic discipline of the world. And physical education is all, and many of the physical education is under the misconception. Though yoga, it never comes to in the form of physical education. Of course, any movement is a physical education. It comes under the physical education. So yoga is a group of physical, mental, and spiritual practices or disciplines which originated in ancient India. Yoga consists of asanas, postures, standing, sitting, long sitting, prone, and supine position that I don't want to, go. You know all about the postures of yoga and the pranayama, which is most important in the present day in the COVID, condition, where you had to strengthen your, lungs, source, severe, acute respiratory syndromes are the causes for the SARS. How you can strengthen your lung? Lung can be strengthened only through pranayama, practicing of Kapalabhati, Ujjayi pranayama every day for 10 to 15 minutes up to 1 hour. That strengthens your lung. And once the lung capacity is enhanced, you'll be away from the disorders, bronchitic disorders. So wellness through yoga, research are looking deeper into the wellness benefits of yoga and uncovering the fascinating evidences of how the practice affects us mentally and physically. There are a number of researchers going around the world with regard to the benefits of yoga, how the physiological and psychological benefits occurs through practice of yoga. Today's picture is very different as yoga has become increasingly integral part of 21st century life. Scientists armed with new tools that allow them to look ever deeper into the body have been hunting their attention to what happens physiologically when they practice yoga, not just asana, but also pranayama and meditation. So, yoga has become one of the popular sport of the day. I call it as a practice of the day. And it becomes and it is a it looks very easy, but it is very difficult. Because, once you sit, you will understand the difficulty. Because the moment man is made to move, and once he asks you to sit, there lies the problem. When the yoga makes you to sit, to understand, to go inside of yourself and to meditate and to know your own strength and weaknesses, that is what is called meditation. Dozens of yoga studies are under the way at medical institutions around the country, including Duke, Harvard, and University of California and San Francisco. Some of the research is funded by National Institute of Health. Wellness is an active process through which the people become aware of and make choices toward a more successful existence. My dear friend, you as a physical education teachers, you should make your mind and you should take up your yoga as one of the sporting activity. A sport means it's a leisure pursuit. Any activities which is done under the purview of the leisure, framed time, that becomes a sporting activity. So wellness is a conscious, self-directed and solving process of achieving full potential. Wellness is multidimensional and holistic, emphasizing the lifestyle, mental and spiritual well-being and the environment. Wellness is positive and affirming. Why I'm talking about the wellness? Now it is 21st, 26th century, nobody talks about the health. It is the day where they demand and they will always talk about the wellness. Wellness is most complicated and most widely accepted concept of the day because it has got 7 dimensions, starting from physical dimension to the intellectual dimension, the emotional dimension, and the environmental to the and also to the occupational. So all these put together, you will become a total personality. That's what the LNT. Sport from the psychological point of view, and Madam Banhati is there as a psychologist. She will definitely accept my views. Yes, sport and physical exercises and activities are considered as one of the therapies today. You go to any of the neurological centers where you find the people with lot of frustration, and that frustration is due to the lack of participation, active participation, and positive attitude. And the sport is the one which makes individual to parties active and to take up the everything in the positive attitude. The promotion of health and fitness is a positive and protective measure that is in line with the field of positive psychology. Vision of increasing wellness being in the world through sports. Sports psychology is the understanding of how this mind influences an athlete's performance in their chosen sport. He always, there is a lot of research in with regard to the sport related to the psychological functioning. How sports enhances the psychological well-being. How it helps in keeping an individual mind very sound. Importance of good sporting behavior. It is the sports which always directs you, and it is the sports which always injects you to behave properly, to behave in a systematic way. And sporting behavior is one. I don't find any sportsman in this country misbehaved. I don't find any of these sportsmen is being, put behind the bars. No, they are the one who respect the rules. They respect the laws. They respect the values. They respect the ideals of the society. That is how the sport has become one of the institutions, social institution, which always demands every individual to go and to practice and to understand what exactly sports mean. Cooperation was no competition without cooperation. I don't find any competition happens without the cooperation. A cooperation of your own players who play with you and the opponent and also the spectators, for example. You have seen number of times how the sports has been standstill because of the non-cooperation of the spectators. The behaviors of a sportsman always work on the spectator side, and it has misled. So there is a cooperation between the spectator and the sportsman, and the officials and the umpire and the sportsman. And this cooperation is learned well through the sport. Defining success, winning and losing, that's one of the important. And sometimes, when I was been to one of the school, one school teacher asked me, "Sir, why these present day children's, even including my kid, she is almost 7, 8 years, she will not accept her own mistakes, and she never says sorry." I told her, this is the reason is you have not sent them for this sport. You send them to the sports, you allow them to play, and the practice of admitting their own mistakes starts from the very beginning, because you have to tell sorry to captain, sorry to the fellow player, sorry to each and everyone, and the same thing will carry forward to the home, and ultimately you will accept and admit whatever is past. That is where we are lagging, and we are not encouraging the children to participate in sport. Unfortunate it is, and it is where the children will learn, and also the knowing of the winning and losing. And losing, it helps them. It gives a courage to accept the lose, courage to accept the lose and move forward. Setting goals in sports and life. Goal setting is not so easy in sports. Winning a medal in a national or international level is not so easy. You had to sweat a lot. You had to go hardships, but ultimately it is the sportsman who set the goal and ultimately wins the medal. There's where you find the tears. It starts with tears when he has been honored with the gold medals, and all those agony comes in front of him, and he starts crying, because it's not so easy. Winning a medal in an international level or a national level or a state level is not a cup of tea, and it gives a lot of, he has to work a lot. And what sacrifice do we have to make in order to do great things? That's what I'm telling you. You have to sacrifice a lot of things. He has to, as a sportsman, he has to sacrifice many of his wishes, many of his desires. He cannot miss the competition. He cannot miss the tournament. He cannot miss the practice session. He cannot say no to the guide, no to the coach, no to the teacher. See, there is a lot of sacrifice. Sacrificing attitudes, helps the sportsman to achieve higher laurels. So, the preparing for a performance, and as you all know, the performance is not an easy task. To prepare for a higher performance, you have to work hard. That hard work helps him, and that makes him to live healthy. And dealing with nervousness, and sportsman has to be very courageous, very bold, and he has to take a decision. He is the decision maker. He cannot ask a coach on the field to what to do, and he has to take a decision. Learning to focus and dealing with disappointment. And number of athletes have expressed their agonies when they are not selected, when they are left out in the team, whether it is a national team or an international team, or when they met with an accident or met with some injuries, and how they have been disappointed and bouncing back. That is another important thing. Any sportsman, for that matter, will not accept his defeat, and disappointment will not lead him to the something psychological depression. But instead of it, he'll bounce back. He will bounce back, and he once again come to the limelight, and he'll participate. That is what is bouncing back quickly is another attitude. That is one of the greatest attitude of the player, which the sports always gives to him. Sports from the sociological point of view. Dear friends, I want to tell you, in
Sorry
most
to
of the
interrupt you,
European...
sir.
Yeah,
Sir,
madam, please.
The PPT which is not being displayed, so if you can just open up the PPT.
Yeah, it's opened up, It is not displayed?
No,
it's
sir,
not,
it
it's
is
not
not
displayed, sir. It's not
Okay,
displayed.
1 minute.
Sure, sir.
1 minute.
Sure, sir.
You just tell me whether it is displaced or not. 1 minute. ಅಲ್ಲಪ್ಪ ತೇಜು ಇದು ಮ್ಯೂಟ್ ಮಾಡಪ್ಪ, ಮ್ಯೂಟ್ ಮಾಡು. ನೀವು ವಿಡಿಯೋ ಅವ್ರ ವಿಡಿಯೋ ಆನ್ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಂಡ್ರೆ PPT ಶೇರ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ, ಇಲ್ಲ ನೀವು ಶೇರ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀರಾ ಸ್ಕ್ರೀನ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ? ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಯು ಸ್ಕ್ರೀನ್? ಅವರಿಗೆ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ,
ಓಪನ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಐ ಮೀನ್ PPT is not getting
ಇಲ್ವಾ?
ಹೌದ್ರಿ ಸರ್.
ಈಗ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆಯಾ?
ಇಲ್ರಿ ಸರ್,
ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ, ಯುವರ್ ಸ್ಕ್ರೀನ್ ಇನ್ ಡಿಸ್ಪ್ಲೇ ಅಂತ ಹಾಕ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ.
We can only see the title, Role of Psychology in Modern Sports too.
Okay, first one.
No, it's not opened only, sir. We are just reading the PPT name.
How to?
Hello, sir. Sorry to disturb you. Vinayak here. Sir, you please stop sharing and start once again.
ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು ಹೇಳಿ?
Stop sharing, ಮಾಡಿ sir. And once again you start sharing.
Start sharing ಅಂತೆ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಇನ್ನೊಂದ್ಸರಿ ಸ್ಟಾಪ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಶೇರ್ ಮಾಡಿ. ಒಂದ್ಸರಿ ಸ್ಟಾಪ್ ಮಾಡಿ ಶೇರ್ ಮಾಡೋಣ.
Yes, sir.
ಓಕೆ. ಶೇರ್ ಎಲ್ಲಿದೆ ನೋಡಪ್ಪ. ಆಗ್ತಿದೆ, ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದೆಯಾ?
Yes, sir. ಈಗ ಬಂದಿದೆ.
ಓಕೆ. ಅವಾಗ್ಲಿಂದು ಅದೇ ಹಾಕ್ತಿತ್ತು, ಬಟ್ somehow I am sorry for the inconvenience. ಓಕೆ, ನಂದು ಇಲ್ದಿದ್ರು ಪಿಕ್ಚರ್ ಇಲ್ಲದೆ ಇದ್ರು ಪರವಾಗಿಲ್ಲ, ಬರುತ್ತಾನೆ. ಅದು ಓದಕ್ಕಾಗಲ್ಲ, ಒಂದೇ ಒಂದು ಪಿಕ್ಚರ್ ತೆಗಿ ಸರ್. ಈ ಕಡೆ okay. Develop social awareness. Now you can see no problem. From the sociological point of view, develop social awareness and social conscious of factors and issues that affect sports. be able to critically examine their own experience in relation to their own sports participation. So, how sports and physical activity may impart knowledge regarding the body, gender, sexuality, social class, race, and ethnicity and disability. Yeah, you've seen that, even in today, you have a racial inequality that you have been seeing and also sounded in many of the parts of the country. It is the one with sports which from the very beginning, it has been, you know, tried its level best to discrimination of race. In a sports scenario, each and everyone plays a vital role. There is no point of, discrimination. And even gender discrimination and race discrimination is very, very low in sports. But however, it can be seen in some of the states, some of the countries, and it is not a constitutionally accepted one. The group behavior, and social organization, group behavior, and social interaction that occurs in the sports setting is most important. In any of the social setup, the organization plays a vital role, and the group behavior and social interactions. Any sport, for example, it's an individual sports or a group sports. Especially in a group sports, there is a close interactions between the player. There has to be close interactions between the amongst the player, without considering their caste, color, creed, language, and other barriers. It is the sports which always gives a kind of oneness, and makes each an individual to understand the goal ahead of them. The social process that occur in sports, such as socialization concepts regarding competition versus cooperation, social stratification, and the issues of social change. Cultural values of sports. Values are based on number of traditions that emanate from religion, race, ethnicity, and geographic location. The foundations of our values is the ideas and accept about what is good, bad, right, and wrong, and what is designed. Because of our culture is diverse, incorporating the numerous groups. I want to give you one example here. Yeah, I had a wonderful, wonderful company with many of my elderly teachers. And with regard to my college days, there was my good teacher. She was a best teacher by name Shakuntala. And she had represented the state more than 10 to 15 times in badminton and almost 15 times in the basketball. And she is the first lady to participate in the first Asian Games. And she has from a very, very orthodox family background. And she used to tell me that how she played the basketball in the 1952 Asian Games, which was held in Delhi. She told me that most of the only Punjabi state girls used to wear the kurta and pajama. Most of the Tamil Nadu and Karnataka and Andhra Pradesh, they used to play with the sari. That was the condition. But that is not a fact today. There is a lot of changes. Occurred because of the participation in sport. That made the values are based on number of traditions and emanate the religious barricades and race barricades and customs and everything. With that, you can say that sport is one of the socializing agents. A sport is a socializing agent which has brought a lot of changes. Some cultural emphasize sports to a greater degree than others. The concepts of beauty and excellence also differ from culture. Therefore, finding a consensus on the issue is very difficult. Here, there is a lot of confusion caste within our communities, within our religion, within our caste, where there are taboos, customs, and traditions which are being forced us. And take example of the woman participating in sports. Even today, many of the families, they don't allow them to participate in sports. They'll ask that who is your coach, whether the female coach is there, female trainer is there. That is the condition. But now the days are changing. Days are changing because of the sport. The woman participating in sport has changed a lot in her social as well as economic life. Some cultural emphasis supposed to be a greater degree than others. The concepts of beauty and excellence is one of the concepts. Core values includes health and wellness. Ultimately, the sports emphasize on health and wellness. I'll come to the point where health is most predominant or more acceptable and more, you know, people wants to be healthy. Yeah, and nobody wants to be ill health. And everyone want to be healthy. How you can be healthy? It is through exercise, it is through activities. More than that, sport, exercising alone and playing with the others differs in their mental attitude and also with their social distancing. And with this concept, health and wellness plays a vital role with regard to the participation in sport, achievement and success, activity and work. And no way sports gave or else encourages for the inactivity. Sport is a movement, sport is an activity, and with that movement, a creative and skillful way of presenting their own ideas, strategies, and their efforts makes them, it brings them the success. Moral orientation, the morality plays a vital role here. Nowadays, nowadays now it is there is a threat for the participation in sports. You have come across that drug has become one of the dangerous unacceptable concept where the competitors are going for just to medal in the event. Unfortunately, moral orientation has to be there, and morality has to be placed in ahead. Humanitarian, that is what is called the sport. Many a time you have seen in the Olympic, you have seen in world-class athletic meets where the fellow, whenever a fellow athlete falls down, automatically whether she wins or lose the match, he gives hand to that fellow. And that humanitarian consideration is one of the most important aspect of the sport. Efficiency and practicality. And efficiency only comes through the practicability. The practicability is only a source of success wherein practice makes them perfect. Science and rationality. Now, there are number of revolutions took part in the sports, whereas with regard to the scientific gadgets has come. Scientific gadgets have been included in the sports as well as the competition, even in evaluation, even in test and other things. And nationalism and patriotism, that is one of the major tasks of the day. Nationalism and patriotism is one of the core values of the society, and that can be motivated, that can be flourished, that can be injected through participating in sport. Democracy, democratical attitude, accepting everything and bringing everyone and understanding everyone, listen to the everyone. These concepts will happens in the sports, and sport is one way of a democratic process. Core values includes the individual personality, group superiority, and progress. Individual personality, the personality plays a vital role in this modern society. Everyone asks about demand the personality, whether he's a policeman or a military personnel or a doctor or an engineer. They have to have a definite, an ideal personality. As a teacher, one has to have an ideal personality. To have an ideal personality, he has to have all the values of his life, and the principles has to be followed in life. And the core values and principles which molds him to be the better individual in a society, in a better individual in a dramatic, in a democratic setup. And group superiority, it is one where the teams games encourages, and there will be a superiority inferiority between the team and between the A division, B division, 3 division. But irrespective of the superiority, they fought for the same goal, and there is no superiority in between the medals and in between the rewards. And the progress comes only through sports. Sports helps for the progress of an individual as well as community as well as the society. See, social The social institution of our society to which the sport are closely linked are the family, education, the media, politics, religion, and economy. The social institution has a greater role to play in a society. So where you have find the family is the one which is most important, and the education and the media, politics, religion, and the economy. Because sports are social phenomena, it is important to study them as they relate to other forms of social life. Especially sports is considered to be one of the responsible for the socialization of the society, socialization of the group, and that actually play an important role. Family organization use sports play an important role in the life of a family in India, especially in the European countries. If the family himself will take the child for the sport, and every family involves in a sports, and involving family itself in a sports, it develops an ideal atmosphere in a family where each and everyone respect each and every core values of the society, as well as the values and modes and the democratical values of the society. And each one in a family should be a player, and each one has to be, if he not be a very competitive player to be in a competitive sport, one who play on ground will understand the essence of the play. They serve as the unifying agent because they may bring the family closer together. Parents and siblings support the athlete, taking him or her to practice and attending the games. Whenever you go to the European countries and see, you will find in each and every house a basketball ring. Whenever they go out, they'll take a basket and they'll put in a ring and they will go, whether it's a father or a mother or a brother or a sister. And everyone will act as a player. And everyone respect the play. And that is what is called the sporting culture. And that sporting culture enhances the individual's, values. And that is the one which is most important. Education is another important aspect. Sports are inextricably intertwined with the institution of education in our society. I had a now great opportunity to visit the Lingraj College. I was very overwhelmed by seeing the facilities provided in the Lingraj College. And every institution has to provide broad varieties of the sporting activities and the facilities for the children to take part in sports and to participate and enjoy the sporting culture. That is one of the most important factor. And ultimately, and most of the institutions, they don't consider sport as one of the essential factor in a educational setup. In an academic setup, even sports plays a vital role. At all levels of education, but particularly high school and colleges, high-level sports or varsity sport competition are present. Everywhere you had to have more number of competitions, and that itself it channelized the youth endeavor and youth energy into the very constructive way and helps him to be better individual in the society. There has been a phenomenal growth in all forms of media in relation to this sport. Nowadays, you have seen whether it is electronic media or a print media. Even in a print media, there are 2, 3, 4 sheets kept exclusively for the promotion of the sports. Even in the electronic media, wherever you see, they will telecast as much as possible with regard to the sporting activities concerned, keeping in mind that sports helps society. Sports makes individuals and helps for the well-being of the individual. Televisions were virtually grown before our eyes as we have witnessed the addition of cable and satellite channels. Sports programming and the coverage of sports in general has become a, a day where you cannot even imagine there is a separate channels, star 1, star 2, star 3, star 4. You imagine how much of money, how much of money is involved in the sport, and that's why I called sport has become an industry. And viewership has become one of the more in the part of an industry. Telecasting has become the part of an industry. Players have become the part of the industry. Manufacturing goods have become the part of the industry. The social responsibility and the accountability of the sportsmen, association, federations, and the government will become a public domain. The people, irrespective of their, cadre and irrespective of her, status, one has to encourage sportsmen, and had to follow and had to support the sports as one of the mean for the better living. And this in this way, sports has become more and more popular and idealistic. And I'll come to the conclusion. Sports as a universal language can be a powerful vehicle to promote health, peace, tolerance, and understanding by bringing people together across boundaries, cultural and religious. In conflict or a post-conflict situation, sports can help to create a structured, constructive outlet for the people affected, an outlet that is oriented towards the peaceful resolution of aggression and tension. Even whenever there is an aggression between the two countries, sports become an ambassador. Sports become a media of tolerance, and they'll always come to the rescue of the aggressions and the war. And it has come to the knowledge of us in many of the cases. It has become a peace, moderator with regard to the rivalry is concerned. Governments and international agencies are increasingly recognizing sports as an important, powerful, and unexploited tool for development in post-conflict reconstruction. Sports is a cost-effective means of achieving development and peace goals. Sports activates and can building brings between them and the local community. There's even now you can see number of organization NGOs organizing the events for the street vendors and even the rack pickers. And this is where you can bring the disapproved, disappointed, neglected community into the mainstream. Sport with its joy and trumps, its pains and defeats, its emotions and challenges is an unrivaled medium of the promotion of education, health, development, and peace. Sport helps us demonstrate in our pursuit of the betterments of humanity that there is more that unity than divides us. That's what I told you. Sports is a constructive phenomena. Sports is an idealistic phenomena where it brings people together and makes them to live happily, understand them to be very happy. Thank you, gentlemen, for the patience listening. Thank you, madam. Thank you for your patience listening. If they have any queries, if they have
Yes.
any doubts, I'm open to them, and you
Yes.
can just. I'm sorry for the inconvenience in the middle. I don't know what has happened with some technical problem. I could not able to, showcase the my PowerPoint PPT. I'm so extremely sorry for that. Okay, fine. Thank you, madam. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for an effective address. And we really agree with you when you said that sports has the power to change the world. Definitely, after the completion of the 7 days FDP program, I'm sure most of the people will have a changed perception towards their mental and physical health, and they will grow as healthier individuals in the days to come. We also second you when you said that one who accepts his defeat is the real winner, just as we are emerging winners after this post COVID-19 crisis. And really, sir, as you said, that yoga has to be included not only as a practice, but it has to be made a religious practice. We really agree with you, and we're sure that I'm sure that most of the people would try to inculcate all the views that you've told in your lecture. Thank you for a really interesting and fascinating lecture.
Thank you.
And now I request if any of the participants have any queries, they can just drop in their questions in the chat box. They can just type their queries and send it in the chat box.
Okay, let me take this opportunity to thank each and everyone, especially to the principal and the vice principal, Madam Banhati, And also, I'm sorry I could not catch up you. You're being a wonderful lady anchoring. I didn't know your name, please. Yeah, please. Your name?
Shraddha Patil.
Shraddha Patil and Vinayak and Raghavendra and especially my good friend Ramarao. And this is the time for us to, rethink with regard to the, sport and physical activities as concerned. And everyone, that's what I told, a family has to play a vital role in promoting sport unless and until there is a strong support from a family. You cannot produce the sportsman. And the sportsman is not produced in the factory. It is been brought up from the family. With these few words, I thank you. I'll be staying back
Yes,
until you say bye.
yes, sir. So moving further now.
Yeah.
Now we move on with the session with the second session. And the resource person for the second session is Dr. Megha Deuskar ma'am. I'll just brief you with Dr. Megha Deuskar ma'am's biodata. Ma'am has completed her master's in clinical psychology from the University of Pune in 2001, and she received a scholarship to complete her doctoral degree. Her doctoral work was on stress reduction through yoga nidra, something which is very relevant, which sir has already stated in his lecture, the importance of yoga. So a form of yogic relaxation. She has deep interest in yoga, and she has received her yoga training from Nasik. Ma'am earned her doctoral degree in 2006, and she started teaching at the postgraduate section of the Department of Psychology in Fergusson College, one of the most reputed colleges in India. She's a PhD guide affiliated to Pune University, and she also coordinates a diploma program, a diploma course in counseling in Fergusson College. Ma'am has completed her counseling, her training in counseling in 2003, and she prefers person-centered counseling. She not only allows actively facilitates the honest expression of feelings, and through such catharsis allows the clients to heal. Uh, Being trained in yoga, she makes extensive use of yogic breathing and relaxation, that is pranayam, as adjuncts in her counseling sessions. She has been a recipient of some very prestigious awards like the Bharat Shikshan Ratna Award, the Vidya Ratan Award, and the Best Educationalist Award for talented personalities. We are very fortunate to have such a dynamic personality as the resource person of our second session. I welcome you to the session, ma'am, and the session is handed over to you. The title of her session, ma'am will be speaking on mental health of children below 10 years of age, and also she will be speaking on how to strengthen immune system in general. Ma'am, you can take over the session now. Just a second, ma'am. Yes, you can begin now. Just hold on, ma'am. There is some technical inconvenience. We are not able to hear you. Just a second. Give me just 1 minute. Yeah, we will unmute you. Uh, Sorry for the inconvenience caused. We are not able to hear the resource person. So just give me 1 minute to set the problem right.
Just check your
Ma'am, please check. Can you just please check your connection? No, we are not able to hear you. From our side, there's no problem.
because your mic is not good.
Is your mic working, ma'am? No, you're not audible, ma'am. Can you just check your connection?
ಇಗ್ನೋರ್ ಸರ್ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಇವರಿಗೆ ಆಲ್ರೆಡಿ ಇಗ್ನೋರ್ ಇದೆ ಅವ್ರು ಚಾಲೂನೇ ಐತಿ ಓಕೆ ನಮ್ಗೆ ಸೌಂಡ್ ಕೇಳಿಸ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಪರ್ಮಿಷನ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೇನೆ
No, ma'am, you're not audible.
ನಾವು ಎಲ್ಲ ಆಪ್ಷನ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೇವೆ ಸ್ಟಿಲ್ ಅವ್ರ ಕಡೆಯಿಂದ ಸೌಂಡ್ ನಮಗೆ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ
Is this better?
Yes, ma'am. Now you're audible. Sorry,
Okay.
sorry for the inconvenience caused.
Okay,
So
okay.
we have with us Dr. Megha Deuskar, ma'am, who's a resource person of the second session, and I hand over the session to you, ma'am.
Yes. So Shraddha madam, first of all, thank you for this flattering introduction. And I would like to congratulate the organizers of this 1 week long faculty development program at KLE Society's Lingaraj College, Belgaum. I know what it takes to organize programs of this magnitude and make sure that all the resource persons are all available and they do their presentations in their time slots and everything. So I know how much groundwork that takes. So I would like to really congratulate the whole team. And especially I would like to express my deepest gratitude to the principal of Lingaraj College and also Banhati madam for inviting me to be a resource person in this particular program. So the topic that I want to speak about today is about the mental health of children below the age of 10. So first of all, it is a fantastic thing that all of you have made sure that when you organize your program, you have addressed every single age group. And that is, I think, a huge positive factor in this faculty development program. So in India's population, if you see, the children below the age of 10 comprise a significant proportion of the population. Just give me 2 minutes. I'll just share my screen with you. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay. So the mental health of children below the age of 10, so it comprises a significant proportion of our population. So if you can see this pie chart, it is almost 17% of our population, which is a huge and whooping lot, especially in this COVID situation right now, where everybody is saying that children below the age of 10 should not be exposed. And their immune systems are rather susceptible. So we have to take care of these children below the age of 10, just as we have to take extra care of children, of people who are above the age of 60, 65. So that older age group and the youngest age group, these are the people who really need a lot of protection. So even if you just look at the numbers of these people, you will find that 23 crore 48 lakh children fall in this category, which is like a huge lot. And so I think as teachers, as educators, and many of us are also parents, I'm sure. So all of us need to really attend to this particular age group and see what is the best that we can do for them in order to cope up, not only with whatever is going on now, but even in the months to come. So here on the right hand side, I have included this little graph of the pandemic. So usually when pandemics strike, this is the way the course of the pandemic goes. So you will find that the preparation phase, so initially when the pandemic begins to strike, it is like people learn that there is something like this coming, but maybe they don't have that much first-hand experience of the pandemic exactly. But in the second phase, you will find that the number of cases affected by the disease will just mount tremendously, like very, very fast. Now, of course, here in this particular graph that these people have developed, they have shown that this curve can be flattened because of all these measures that we are taking, like social distancing, quarantining, not allowing that much contact with people who are affected by the illness, etc. But still, if you see, uh, the number of cases will rise, so whether it is the red graph, which is like the natural course of the pandemic, or whether it is after taking those measures, but still the number of cases are going to rise. And then slowly you find that the whole society begins to come back to normal. Now this phase of actually the whole economy and the entire social system coming back to normalcy can take anywhere between 1 to 3 years. That is usually the way disasters are looked at. Now, in these 3 years, of course, there will be that recovery phase is also not like a straight upward graph where, day by day the situation improves. But there are going to be like these peaks and troughs and peaks and troughs, and slowly the economy and the whole social system will come back to normalcy. So I think, as we all can appreciate, right now we are in the second stage of this pandemic. So what I have done in my presentation is that I have divided the problems of children, like the mental health problems that children can face, into both of these categories. So this is the second phase that we are going through, and I will also talk about what children might face in the third phase. So let us just see what happens in the second phase. Where a government has taken extreme measures to quarantine and to keep everybody inside their homes, and there are so many messages going out that stay home, stay safe, no schools are operating and everything. Now if even as adults we are feeling a lot of that pressure and that anxiety, then what must be happening with children? So let us look at some of those mental health issues that children might face in the second phase of this pandemic when the cases are rising. So first of all, children are going to feel extremely anxious and extremely stressed just because of staying home. So I think you can all imagine that below the age of 10, children are so used to that routine. Many of them go to, when they're very small, they go to play schools, then usually in schools, and even the evenings also, they have this habit of really playing out on the playground. So all these anxieties are bound to rise because of the quarantine. Then of course they are going to miss school, because in school they get a lot of opportunities to play with their playmates. And I think many children just go to school because they want to meet friends, and I don't think they really go to school because they want to study, but it's really about having fun time with friends. So the insufficient opportunities of play, that also can be a tremendous stressor for children in this age group. Other than that, if you look at the home scenario, in many places, grandparents have been separated from the children for multiple reasons. So sometimes grandparents used to come off and on to meet children, or children used to go to stay with their grandparents. And now, because of this distancing and quarantining, children get very little opportunity. Many children completely lose out on that contact with their grandparents. Many of these stresses can be very disenfranchised, in the sense that we don't realize the impact that it is having on the child, but it is definitely having an impact. Many children are very used to that support of the grandparent, probably during the day, or maybe if they meet them in the evening, they're very used to that support. So that is also something that they are going to miss. Now, another thing that has happened is in the present moment. So we have, I think the lockdown began on the 25th of March. So it has already been 2.5 months. Now there are many families where the parents' source of income has dwindled a lot. So many parents are facing that the crisis of very, very reduced income. Now, usually when pandemics strike and when people's income reduces, one of the things that very naturally happens is that there are tensions that grow between, especially between marital partners. And that leads to increased conflict between parents. Now, we all, I think as psychologists, we all appreciate a lot that whenever there are conflicts between parents, children are bound to suffer a lot, because it causes a lot of fear. It's very, very difficult for a child to understand and to really not stay affected even if the parents are fighting. I think it's really not a possibility. Children get very scared when their parents are fighting. In fact, they have also, in several researches in the past, of course, very little researches are available right now in the present pandemic, but in the past, they have figured out that domestic violence grows during pandemics. So that stress is, of course, like an added stress factor for children. Now, in many homes, it is also an unfortunate reality that children are going to see the death of loved ones, either because of the disease or because of old age or whatever in this lockdown period. Now the child does not have sufficient opportunity to really grieve, because when deaths happen, children are not supposed to go there, children are not supposed to meet the other family members, probably their cousins, and that can make that whole loss situation very difficult in this period. So this was about a whole set of stressors that children might be facing in this second stage of the pandemic. But like I said, in the months to come, when the whole pandemic is going to like reduce, the number of cases are going to reduce, but the social and the economic systems have not yet reached that point of full stability. So in that third recovery phase, what could be the challenges that children might face? Now, economic pressures which are going to be faced by parents are going to be enormous. Like I just said minutes ago, it might lead to increased conflicts and domestic violence among the parents, and that can be very difficult for children. Now, since children have very limited access to school and also to being with friends, one of the side effects which is predicted now, the WHO has also predicted, that cases of cyberbullying and everything will rise a lot. In fact, even sexual violence which is committed online, cases of these kind might rise a lot in the months to come. Now, it is quite likely that psychologists and psychiatrists might come across children who complain of cyberbullying, isolated, taunted online, etc. So it's very urgent and necessary for us to stay aware and stay prepared for what might come in the future. Now, all children are at risk. It is very difficult. The whole pandemic situation is very difficult for even normal adults, normal children. But then there are certain special categories of children who are at added risk for all these problems. So who are these children? Now, one of the things is that children who already have existing problems, pre-existing problems, these are the children who might have many more aggravated issues in the months to come. One of the most direly affected lot is going to be children with autism, because if you like if we appreciate this idea that children with autism have this enormous rigidity and necessity to follow a very, very structured routine. So if you see all autism care centers, children come and they follow a very specific routine when they are in their care centers. So disruption in that daily routine might cause a lot of problems for autistic children. Similarly, ADHD, children with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, so they are really used to having this open space to play, because they have a lot of like unbounded energy and constantly want to run from one activity to the other, and then to stay inside the locked four walls of the house, that can be really, really difficult for the ADHD child. And while saying that, I'm also somehow especially aware of what pressure that might be creating for parents of children with either autism or ADHD. Now, another lot of children who are going to be severely affected because of this in terms of mental health are the children with learning disabilities. Now, this is because children with learning disabilities are usually given remedial classes when they go to school. So special measures to help them read, write, and to practice whatever they have learned are all usually made available in schools. Now there is this disruption in school activity, and children are constantly now doing online classes. So in many schools, teachers are teaching online classes. Of course, there is no other alternative, so teachers also cannot be blamed for that. But for a child to sit back at home and to really listen to whatever is taught in an online class and to absorb it can be very difficult. As it is very difficult for the teachers to deliver the topic. And then, so when they don't have students face to face, it's very difficult to deliver that topic. Plus now, for the child to understand the topic on a screen and then to memorize it and learn it, it's going to be very, very difficult. With the result that children might feel very frustrated, the children with learning disabilities. And of course, we know that children who already have a pre-existing depression or pre-existing problems related to anxiety, their problems, of course, will be terribly aggravated because of that constant staying at home, no opportunities to socialize with people, no opportunities to connect with friends, etc. What happens is, somehow it is a very unfortunate reality that children have a lot of these problems. Like I just said, autism, LD, ADHD, depression, anxiety, and especially problems like depression and anxiety go unnoticed. So there is a huge majority of children, at least in India, who have a problem, but they do not get the required psychiatric or psychological help. So why is this? So the reason is that many times children's problems are totally disguised. So we cannot make out that the child is actually depressed. So one of the common things which I'll just like to touch upon is that a child who is irritable, for the parent, it just looks like he's throwing tantrums every now and then. And then parents try to quiet the child down. Sometimes they go to that extent of punishing the child very harshly, locking the child inside the room, or giving corporal punishment and stuff like that. But little do they realize that the tantrum in the child, the anger expression in the child, is actually a symptom of underlying depression. So childhood depression can go unnoticed generally. Like it's a very, very, like a very, like a very strong possibility that a child who is throwing tantrums continuously is actually depressed, but his depression doesn't get noticed. So here are some signs that parents should watch out for, especially in a child under the age of 10. If the child is showing these signs, then you have to be a little alert, either to help the child at home or to seek professional help. Now, some of these signs are, so if the child has stopped taking interest in talking, so many times I've seen that children lock themselves in their rooms and they close all the curtains and they just sleep and they don't want to talk to anybody. So if the child is showing these kind of symptoms, then it is quite possible that the child is suffering from some underlying pathology. Similarly, I told you increased irritability. If there is constant anger expression, then yes. There is a participant who has raised her hand. Should we just ask? Indu Godra raised her hand. So should we just take a pause and ask what the question is, or should we take all the questions at the end? I think the organizers will shortly tell me if I'm supposed to take all the questions at the end. So I will try to answer as many questions as I can at the end. Then enuresis. So if you find that a child above the age of 5 or 6 is still wetting his or her bed very frequently, like more than 2-3 times every week, then you have to really be alert that there could be some problem with the child. Yes?
Sorry to interrupt, ma'am.
Yes, yeah.
We can take all the questions at the end only.
Yes, I think so. Okay. So roughly, I think should I leave about 10 minutes in the end to answer questions?
Yes, ma'am, no problem.
10 minutes in the end. Okay. All right. Then if the child is showing excessive clinginess, or the child just sleeps a lot, they just don't want to get up from bed, and they show that sign of being very edgy and very not wanting to talk to anybody. So then you can be very, very sure that the child is showing some kind of a mental health issue. And it is really important to address the issue either at home or by contacting a mental health professional. Okay, now a connected part of my presentation over here is that one more thing that children might show is increasing infections. So if the child is, because somehow this is also very deeply and very intricately interwoven with mental health. So I'm just going to talk about the immune system a little bit over here. So if the child shows these signs that they are frequently falling sick, and you have to take the child to the doctor pretty frequently, either for upper respiratory tract infections or any infections, any other infections. So then you can be pretty sure that the child is going through some kind of a stress. So a small part of my presentation after this point is going to be about how our stress actually compromises the functioning of the immune system. Okay, so psychoneuroimmunology, PNI, is a new and emerging, not exactly new, but it's a recent field within the field of psychological research, which basically takes into consideration how our immune system responds to stress, or how is it affected by either stress or a positive emotion, both. Now, if some of the participants are really keen to go over these research studies, you might find some very beautiful research studies which have been conducted by Kang, Ko, McCarthy and their colleagues. So these people have published papers in 1996, 97, 98, many papers about pediatric samples. So what they have done is that in many of their studies, they have tried to look at these two parameters, lymphocyte proliferation and natural killer cell activity. And they have found that actually stress that children go through. So in one of the studies which they had conducted, they had taken the time around exams, which is very stressful for the child. So that time was the way that stress was operationalized. And they actually found that children's immune system is terribly compromised during exam time. And what was more revealing was that in their sample, they had some normal children and some asthmatic children. So it was these asthmatic children whose immune system did not come back to normalcy even after the exam was over. Whereas in the normal children, it showed like a little dip, like a malfunctioning of the immune system around exam time. And slowly then their scores of immune parameters began to come back to normalcy. But not so in the asthmatic sample. So I think that also again sort of corroborates with whatever we have said in the last slide, that children who already have pre-existing problems can be at much higher risk for infection also, and for mental health problems also during or after the pandemic. Now let us try to explore this field of psychoneuroimmunology a little bit in detail. So our first idea that we need to explore is, how does the human immune system function? Okay, so in a very basic sense of the term, the human immune system is basically like a country's army. So we know that the country's army people patrol the borders of the country, and they figure out whoever is coming in the country. So they detect people who are not from the country, and they have to make sure that these people are also not dangerous to the country, and only then decide whether they actually want to kill them or no. Okay, because there are infiltrators who come into the country, but they may not be dangerous. Now that's exactly what is happening in the human immune system. So a lot of bacteria, germs, viruses are entering the body every time. So every time we breathe in, a lot of viruses and bacteria enter the body. Not all bacteria and not all germs are harmful. So while the immune system, one of the jobs that the immune system is doing is to actually figure out what is the self, like the self cell, its own cells, and what are foreign bodies. That is one thing it has to do. But on the other hand, it is a very intelligent system, and it has to also understand that not all foreign bodies are harmful or dangerous, so they don't need to be eliminated or eradicated. Secondly, just like we know that whenever there are riots in the country, so at that time it is the army that is deployed. So what does the army do? It takes control and it tries to eliminate people who are causing, who are being dangerous to the country. So these could be the country's own citizens also, but if they are causing a lot of riots, it is the army that takes the decision to eliminate them. Now something similar also happens in the human immune system. So for example, cells like cancer cells, so they are cells of our own body, but they need to be eliminated by the immune system. So it is like a twofold job that the immune system is doing. Now, a third and important function that the immune system does is that once the infection has been taken care of, the human immune system also develops a memory of how that germ or that virus was taken care of, so that next time if the same virus comes in the body, then the body is already immune to it. The body has developed resistance to that disease. Now, just as I'm explaining the whole concept of the human immune system, this is a very, very brief and a very elementary explanation. I'm sure that we realize that these functions that of the immune system are multifold, and that is why if you look at the cells of the immune system, there are many different kinds of immune cells. It is not just the white blood cells, but there's a whole differentiation in the functions that they carry out. So here we've just listed a few of them, like the mast cells, monocytes, neutrophils, eosinophils, basophils, dendritic cells, macrophages, natural killer cells, etc. So you can imagine how many different functions the immune system is carrying out. Now this very complicated diagram, I don't think we really need to understand much in this, but if you look at this diagram, these green cell, the antigens that we see, they are like basically the viruses and the bacteria that enter the body. Now this diagram basically tries to show what the immune system does. So the first thing that the immune system does is, the moment from a particular site in the body there's a trickling in or there's an infiltration of an antigen, immediately the macrophages, macro means big and phages are eaters, so the big eaters basically engulf the cell. The cell. Then they also display parts of that bacteria or that virus on its surface. Now, when helper T cells recognize that there is this macrophage which is displaying a part of the virus on it, then it starts to activate other cells. So it proliferates into Th1 or Th2 cells, then that leads to a B cell response, and then together they help to generate antibodies. Okay, and then they also attack those cells which have been infected by the virus, and then they develop enzymes that basically kill the virus. Other than that, the next function that the human system has to carry out, like I told you, is to develop a memory. So once the whole infection has been taken care of, there are other B cells that develop a memory, and they keep a log, like they keep a register of the particular enzyme that was used to combat a particular virus. That is why you find that in children, when they are born, first they will have a lot of infections in the first few months of their birth. That is why every time the season changes, children will fall ill. But the frequency with which children fall ill will sharply reduce after the age of 5 years. Okay, so that is because these B cells have already developed a lot of memories of how particular viruses have been combated in the past, and so the child is not now susceptible to that illness if the same virus has already infected the child once. Okay, so this capacity to develop immunity to different illnesses is a huge thing that the human immune system does. Now, this particular field of how emotions, so what has stress now got to do with the immune response? This field has been pioneered by this person called Janice Kikold-Glaser, and of course a lot of her colleagues. So if you want to look her up on the internet, you can find a lot of her beautiful papers published. So from the year 1986, she and her colleagues have carried out a number of studies that have shown this link between the stress and the immune system. So first of all, what they realized was that medical students somehow fall ill just before exams. That was the starting point. So several papers were published about this particular thing. The second is, she also figured out that people seem to fall ill after naturalistic major life events. Means whenever people have gone through a very distressing life event, such as the death of a loved one, or somebody in the family getting a diagnosis of a terminal illness, etc., that can be a huge stressor for the person. And soon after that, that person's immune system can get severely compromised. Now, the method that she followed in order to investigate these effects of the stress on the immune system were also very ingenious. So The idea was to inject a mitogen, that means a substance that mimics the action of an antigen, into the body, and to see how fast the proliferation, or how fast the body is able to detect the presence of an antigen and to mount an immune response. That was the methodology she used. And she in fact found that even short-term stresses that we go through in our daily life, which she called as naturalistic minor life events. So as minor as, you getting stuck in a traffic jam, that can be very stressful. Or like I said, suddenly an exam being declared, that can be very stressful. So this also in her studies, time and again, she was able to show and prove that the immunosuppression, or there's a compromise of the immune system that happens even with naturalistic minor life events. Major, of course, we understand that it is a huge tax on the mind, that when you go through something really disastrous. But even minor life events can have a compromising effect on the immune system. And she also figured out how negative mood states. So one of the studies that have been published in the area of psychoneuroimmunology has been that our immune system is kind of compromised even before we go to a dentist, because we are very anxious about how much pain we have to suffer when we go to a dentist. So why is that so? Now, if we have understood this whole idea properly, we sort of understand that to maintain an army, okay, is a huge costly thing for the body. It's a very, very costly thing. Just like to maintain a very, very robust and a very powerful army is a very costly thing for any country. So similarly, to mount this immune response is a costly thing for the human body. Now what happens is when the body is or the mind also is under stress, then suddenly all the energy reserves of the body are directed towards combating that emergency situation. So here in this diagram, you will see this sympathetic nervous system. So the fight or flight response, as we all know, it constitutes of, dilating the pupils and giving like increased blood flow to the limbs, for the hands and for the feet to run away from the danger, etc. But at the same time, if you see the vegetative functions, like digestion, for example, digestion of food. So that is something that the body suspends temporarily, because it knows that that can be taken care of at a later point in time. Right now, the danger at hand has to be the first priority, where all the reserves, the energy reserves of the body have to be directed. So that is why when the body is going through a stressful situation, the mind is going through a stressful situation, just as all the vegetative functions like digestion are temporarily suspended, so also the human immune response is temporarily suspended. Okay, because to have the human immune system functioning is a very costly thing. We expend a lot of energy for that. In fact, just to explain my point a little better in terms of examples that we all can relate to. So whenever we fall sick, we start feeling very, very tired, especially when we have a fever, we start feeling very tired. So this is because the body's immune system is functioning really fast. So all the macrophages, natural killer cells, T cells, B cells, all of them are functioning really, really fast. And for that, the body requires a lot of energy. And that is why all the energy is directed to the immune system and the body feels very tired. Exactly reverse happens during stress, times of stress. All the reserves of the body are given to all the organs that need that energy, and the immune system is temporarily suspended. Now that is the reason that when a person mental stress, where the whole hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis is activated, there is also a substance called cortisol that gets released during times of stress, and this cortisol actually suppresses the action of the immune system. That is why when people are going through either major or minor life stresses, their immune system is especially compromised. Now, coming back to our topic about children. So children under the age of 10, can we somehow help them in this time when they are actually going through a lot of stress? First of all, I think we need to recognize and acknowledge that children at this point are going through a lot of stress. So there are people who have shown that interventions like relaxation and self-hypnosis can really, really help children. So self-hypnosis, instead of making it sound very difficult, I think we should try to understand that self-hypnosis is in other ways, you can also look at it as self-suggestion. So if children are able to somehow visualize that something nice is happening in their body, or um, their entire immune system is functioning beautifully, it somehow has an effect on the actual functioning of the immune system. And relaxation interventions. Now what has happened is that very few studies have been conducted really for children in pediatric samples. So first of all, pediatricians are very worried about giving these samples of children for any kind of research purposes, etc. And it is very difficult to really coordinate between people who do immune system research and pediatric psychologists. So hello, there is a little disturbance. I'm able to, I'm just getting a lot of noise.
Yes, ma'am. 1 second.
Uh-huh.
I request the participants to mute themselves. Is it okay now?
Yes, yeah, much better. Okay. Similarly, biofeedback, that has also been shown to be a huge intervention to get all the immune system and other parameters of children back to normal. So if we can read up all these studies by Ollendick and King, Holden et al., etc., because they have done these very beautiful interventions. Similarly, telepsychiatry. Now, telepsychiatry is something that is not really so prevalent in India, but even the psychiatrist and the psychologist can keep contacting the child over the phone and give sessions to the child. So that has also been shown to be a very profitable intervention. Now, some of the things that parents can actually do in order to help children even at home is, first of all, for children of that age, maintaining a routine is very important. Especially, I told you, autistic children definitely need a routine, but even other children start functioning very effectively if they have a definite routine to fall back on. Second is spending relaxed time with children. So sometimes, if you just watch a child do some painting or expressive arts, you will find that children are able to get out a lot of their pent-up emotions through their play. Then children are going to ask us anxiety producing questions about the pandemic, or about when is school going to resume, or am I never going to be able to see my grandparents, etc. So as candidly as possible, if parents can really understand that this time is a very stressful time for children, and really keep aside some time to answer these questions candidly, I think that can be a huge support for them. Secondly, there are parents who have been very sensitive, and they have done that, and they have done it very profitably. And that is to give children specific times during the day when they can connect with their grandparents over video, or any other loved ones, maybe their cousins, who can come together on video and talk to each other and play for a while. So that can be a very creative method to help the child to unwind a little bit. Generally, parents, can we do anything as psychologists to help parents also? So now the parent just spending that relaxed attention, like relaxed time with a lot of loving attention to the child, in and of itself can be enormously healing for children. So usually what happens is, there are simple techniques which parents are not taught, so it is, I think, the responsibility of us as psychologists to reach out to parents and help them take support groups with each other, and we also facilitate those support groups. So there is a particular way in which a play has to be done with children. Most adults, what they do is they start directing the play. They start telling the child, come, let's play cross and zero, for example. So that's not a healing, that's not very healing for the child. So usually what happens in play therapy or filial play therapy is that the child is allowed to take the lead role in such a play, and the parent or the adult deliberately takes a less powerful stance. So the adult might say something like, no, I don't know, teach me what to do. And then the child, so if you start taking interest in the child's, suppose, dollhouse, and you ask her, that oh, where is she going? So you become one with that child's internal world, and then allow her to express whatever she is expressing. But you become secondary, like you take the less powerful role, deliberately the less powerful role, and allow the child to lead. Then the child's mind starts really creating magic. So they know how to heal themselves because of this. So there's this particular method of playing which I think we can very easily teach parents and allow parents to experiment with that. especially in this time when parents shell out to just play with their children. One earnest request is to keep studies out of the way, because that is anyway what the child is bombarded with day in and day out. So it's really important to keep studies out of the way and really relate to the child just for the sake of play. First of all, this will foster a closer bond with the parent, and finally it will also indirectly make that immune system function better. Now in this whole pandemic, I just don't want to end my presentation with all bad things, because we've already got so many negative signals and so many negative news every day. So it is not all that bad. There are good things also that are happening. So first of all, children in the last couple of months have really got a lot more time to connect with their parents, because parents are also at home and children are also at home. Secondly, children who had a fear of schools, because probably they were bullied in school, or probably because they used to find the whole atmosphere in school extremely overwhelming, they are somehow recovering because of being like that, in constant contact with their parents and in the safe environment at home, etc. Finally, government has also, I think, taken these measures to cancel examinations, and that has been a huge load off children. So it is not all bad, but there have been good things also. So with this, it's just 10 minutes. 10 minutes more time. So I would like to end my presentation here and leave the time for participants to ask questions. Somebody had already raised their hand, I think.
Sorry to interrupt you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Participants have dropped in their questions in the chat box.
Okay.
So I think you can read them and answer it yourself.
Okay. 1 minute. I'll just, okay, chat. Okay. I think I'm...
Just open the chat box, ma'am.
I have opened the chat box. So I'll just look at the questions.
Madam, I'm Jitendra Manjula. Madam, what to do is Jitendra Manjula.
Jitendra Munjal, no?
Munjal, okay.
Okay. So, Madam, what to do if child watches mobile or screen around 4 hours a day in COVID times and throws tantrums if withdrawn? So, I think... first of all my empathy and my sympathy is with you, because I think you're a parent. It's really difficult to take the child off the screen. I totally understand. So one thing I just want to highlight again is that when you tell the child don't do this, if you're able to provide an alternative as to what to do, then it becomes easier. So if you say to the child don't watch the mobile, but then what to do, so it's not such a convenient path. But if you are able to shell out some special time for the child, so if you tell the child that okay, in this half an hour I'm not going to attend to my mobile, I'm not going to look at the screen, and I'm going to be 100% with you and play exactly the way you want, okay, then the child is going to learn to enjoy that time with you creatively. Now when that happens, you will also find that the child like they will start asking for more and more time. In fact, you as a parent will have to have a lot of support time for yourself. It is not a convenient method, but you will find that the child will rapidly get de-addicted to from the screen. I just don't want to sound high-handed at this point, and I totally understand what you must be going through, but I just this is the best answer that I can give. Okay.
Savita.
Yeah,
thank you, ma'am.
Good. Yeah.
Savita Singh.
Savita Singh, ma'am, please suggest some tips for parents, especially when the child behaves rude, stubborn, or hyper. Yeah, so I'm just going to be doing another live session, especially for parents of toddlers. And in that, one of the things that the first thing that I'm going to say is that the child is not doing all that to irritate you. It's a very sorry misconception that the child is doing that to bother you, but no, the child doesn't want to do that. The thing is, there is something upsetting for the child. No, there is something stressful. There is something that the child is, their mind is, rapidly trying to work around, but they are not able to find that, and that is the reason that children become like that, very stubborn, very rude, etc. Now, the idea is to really stay close when the child is throwing a tantrum. Usually, what happens is that when the child throws a tantrum, we also, come down very heavily on the child, and we also start to um, punish the child. Okay, so that is going to take us nowhere. So here, when the child is upset, it is very important for the parent to really stay quiet and really listen to the child. Now, the child might do all kinds of violent movements, they might stomp their feet, they might want to hit you or whatever. So within those boundaries, that the child is not, for example, allowed to shatter property, or not allowed to hit themselves or you, but within that boundary, if you really allow the child to do all that, to struggle and to swear, especially, and to sweat, and have those angry voices come out, you will find that a lot of catharsis happens. But if you stay listening very lovingly even after that, then the child will tell you what is going wrong, maybe in a very indirect way. So I will just give you an example. There was a child who wanted to play with her grandparent, and she chose a play where she said that, both of us will talk to each other on the phone, and we are going to sit in separate rooms, and you are going to be me and I am going to be my mother, and then she would first call the grandmother and say, oh honey, I'm going to see you for lunch today, and then after 2 minutes she would again call and say, honey, I have a meeting in office, I'm not going to come today. So the child was basically trying to get out that frustration, that every time the mother has to cancel the promise, she cannot keep the promise. So for all you know, the child might be going through some stress, and that is what they are trying to get out, and that is why they are hyper and stubborn. So if you can stay listening patiently, the child will express more, and you will also find that the number of tantrums come down if you stay attentive. Okay.
There are many
Yes.
questions, ma'am.
I know we cannot answer all of them.
All of them, yeah.
Yeah, so I'll just try to go. Madam, cancel examinations and loss of studies already taken till their studies, and if we try not to mention about studies at all, doesn't mean that the child will lose his interest. Yeah, true. I agree with that. Ma'am, how to increase weight of the child, whether she be physically active or mentally also very sharp? So this question, I think you should ask your pediatrician, because many times parents are just not satisfied with the child's weight, but the pediatrician says that it's totally fine if the child is skinny but active. So for that, what is your child's age and weight? You will have to really consult your pediatrician. Ma'am, how to nowadays, okay, online studies there for children, it showed children are habitual to mobile. How can we handle this situation? Which is, I think, exactly like the first question. Yeah. What to do? Who is this? Parivandan Prabhakaran. What to do if the child has more energy, likes hitting others and breaking the things and beating others? So see, like those boundaries of safety, that is, those limits will have to be set in any case, because you cannot just allow the child to lash out at people indiscriminately and hurt themselves also, and you also, and destroy property also. So those boundaries have to be allowed, but within that boundary, are you allowing the child to really express what they want to express and what they want to say? So that is also another question. Now this setting the boundary also happens to be a very healing thing for children, so if parents are not setting boundaries at all, that also can be very scary for the child. So if the parent says that, okay, you can stomp your feet, you can for example tear a paper, okay, that you can do, or you can pound on the pillow in order to get your anger out, but you cannot shatter a glass. Okay, so the child feels safe actually within that boundary. That is what I want to tell you.
We can have a last question now.
Children don't have a routine.
Yeah.
Children don't have a routine of sleeping, eating and waking up. What to do? So see, like some amount of disruption in sleeping and eating timings is bound to happen, because the parents also don't have a structured routine. The child also is not going to school, so some amount of disturbance will happen. But within those limits, if we are able to at least make those meal times plus or minus 1 hour, but clear meal times, or the child is allowed to, for example, stay awake till 11:30, but probably not beyond that. Okay, so even that helps the child. In any case, make sure that the child gets adequate sleep, like usually children need 8 to 9 hours of good sleep. So within those, so whatever is practically possible, I think we'll have to do that much. All the routine and everything cannot be set totally right in the pandemic. I totally understand. Thank you so much. I think the audience also has been a very, very participative and interactive audience, and it has been my pleasure to interact with all of you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, ma'am, for such an effective lecture. Thank you for taking us on an emotional roller coaster ride. Each and every sentence of your lecture was so relatable, so practical. We were living through your lecture actually. And this topic of the second session was specially prescribed because this is the current situation which is prevalent in the society during the COVID period.
Yes.
And thank you for addressing all the problems related to this stress management and wellness during COVID period. So I thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Yes, thank you so much for inviting me also, and for all these interactive, the questions also from the audience. And I once again like to thank the organizers of the faculty development program for making it also well organized.
Thank you from once again, ma'am, from all the organizers. And with this, we come to the end of the first day of the 7-day online faculty development program. And this is just for the information of the participants that the second day of the FDP program will be the chief guest of the third session will be Dr. Reena Punia, Associate Professor, Department of Physical Education and Sports, Manipal University, Jaipur. And she will be speaking on stress management. And the next session, the resource person of the next session will be Dr. Gajanan Prabhu, Associate Professor, Department of Physical Education and Sports, Kuvempu University, Shivamogga. And Sir will speak on the topic wellness through home-based physical activity. Okay? So I would like to take leave of all the participants and resource persons. Another important information, the link of tomorrow's session, the link of today's session will be sent on through your on your registered email ID and through Telegram. Participants are requested. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So for resource persons also, will you give a recording of these sessions?
Yes.
Can you send us?
Yes, ma'am. Definitely, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you so much.
So, thank you everyone and all. And I would like to leave from you.
Thank you.
Thank you.